Hello, remote learners. I'm back with our next signpost that we are going to be learning about, and this signpost is the one for tough questions. So this is the notice and note signpost for tough questions, and the tough questions are those that we ask ourselves, or someone else asks themselves, or it's like this big, great question that nobody really seems to know the answer to. Characters will ask themselves that, or someone in the story. So sometimes we even ask ourselves that, right? In our own lives, but in our books that we're reading, our characters will ask themselves some big, really big questions that are kind of like they don't have an answer, or they don't have an answer yet. And they're going to have to go through some conflict, or they're going to have to go through some adversity or some things in the story to help them answer that really tough question in the story. So when you share this tough question, you're really sharing something that bothers you, right? So a character is something's really bothering them. That's why they have this internal conflict, and that's why they have this really tough question. It's something that's going on that's kind of like turbulent in them. So sometimes authors will give this to us in like a really straightforward way. Like the main character might go to a trusted person, or he might ask himself or herself the question, and but it doesn't have an obviously easy answer. It's usually a big, grand question that, it's going to take some time for the character to discover what the answer is, or the character's going to have to go through some struggles to figure out what the answer is. And often the tough question will show up in pairs. Like, for example, why won't they talk to me anymore? And why is everyone treating me this way? Right? Those are some big questions. The character may not automatically have answers to that, to those kinds of questions. And occasionally the character might not even ask a question, but might say something and use some keywords like, I wonder if, right? Or I wonder what, or I wonder how. Right? When they use those I wonder, they're having that internal dialogue, they're having that internal conflict, and they're trying to figure something out. So once you notice that tough question or that statement that begins with I wonder, it's important to stop and ask yourself a question. And remember, we always have a question that we ask ourselves when we're as a reader. So in this case, when you're reading and a character realizes or asks him or herself a difficult question, you should stop and then ask yourself, how does this question help me understand the character and or the story better? This is going to give you some insight into either your character or the story. It's going to make you have this this realization, right, about the character or about the story. And then the answer to this question may give you clues about what conflict is happening. Remember, I said the internal conflict, what's happening inside that character or inside the story. But it also may foreshadow what will happen later in the story. That big word foreshadow means predict, right? What is going to come. It's kind of like a little glimpse into the future of your book. It may foreshadow, it may tell you, this is what is going to happen. This is how things are going to get resolved. So it might give you some insight into that. So when you notice your character having a difficult question they've either asked themselves, or they've asked a trusted adult or a wiser character in their story, or they say, I wonder if, I wonder what might happen, right? You're going to stop and ask yourself, how does this question help me understand the character and or story better? So the internal conflict or the deep problems that worry the character often let the character share that this conflict that they're having, which leads to those difficult questions. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a short story. It's called A Long Walk to Water, and this is a book, so it's just an excerpt from a book like we did before with Crash. And in this book, it tells about what happens to an 11-year-old who lives in the Sudan, which is a country not in the United States, during a time in which rebels are raiding villages. So that means people who are against the current government or the current people in power, they're going into villages and they're raiding them, meaning they're going and stealing and they're doing things that they should not be doing. And this is a scene early on in the novel where 11-year-old Salva has become separated from the rest of his family. So he's not with the rest of his family anymore after the rebels have attacked his small Sudanese village. And he's now all alone and scared, and he's running. Okay? So you've got that background knowledge. He's alone. He's scared. He's running away from these rebels that have attacked his village, and he's been separated from his family. So let's be listening for a tough question or an I wonder, right? If he says I wonder. Salva lowered his head and ran. He ran until he could not run anymore. Then he walked for hours until the sun was nearly gone from the sky. Other people were walking too. There were so many of them that they couldn't all be from the school village. They must have come from the whole area. As Salva walked, the same thoughts kept going through his head in rhythm with his steps. Where are we going? Where is my family? When will I see them again? So, wow, those are some really tough questions he's asking himself, right? Where are we going? Where is my family? When will I see them again? Are those easy answers? Are those things that he can just answer right now? No, those are some thoughts that are keep repeating over and over in his head as he's running and running away from his village. And obviously this 11-year-old boy, this is causing him some pain and some anxiety, and he's really upset. And so the author is showing me these difficult questions that this character is considering, and I really want to stop and now think about those questions, because they're showing me these conflicts and these problems that this character is worried about. This character is worried about where he's going to be. Where is he going? He's worried about his family. Where are they? What is happening to his family? And he's worried about when he's even going to see his family again. Those are some really big, deep questions that this poor 11-year-old boy is concerned with. So this makes me wonder, how do these questions help me understand the character and our story better? Well, it helps me understand that this boy is lost and this boy is scared, right? And this boy is worried. And it's also helping me understand the story that this character is going through some very serious trauma in his life, right? This big upheaval in his life that he doesn't know what to do. He's losing his home and he doesn't know where his family is. Those are some big things to be taken away from you, right? And so he's got these big questions about it. And they're all in these desperate circumstances, and they're just trying to escape. And they're worried, he's worried he might not see his family again. And I would bet his parents are worried that they might not see Salva again either. So let's read on and see if there's any other big questions that Salva has, or if he's answered any of these questions. And we're going to skip ahead to a point in the story where Salva has been on his own for quite a while. But he finds a small group of people who are just trying to survive. Sure enough, there were now 3 women giving water to the men on the ground. Like a miracle, the small amounts of water revived them. They were able to stagger to their feet and join the group as the walking continued. But their 5 dead companions were left behind. There were no tools with which to dig, and besides, burying the dead men would have taken too much time. Salva tried not to look as he walked past the bodies, but his eyes were drawn in their direction. He knew what would happen. Vultures would find the bodies and strip them of their flesh until only the bones remained. He felt sick at the thought of those men first dying in such a horrible way and then having even their corpses ravaged. If he were older and stronger, would he have given water to those men? Or would he, like most of the group, have kept his water for himself? It was the group's 3rd day in the desert. By sunset, they would be out of the desert, and after that, it would not be far to the Itang refugee camp in Ethiopia. So, wow, that's a really heavy section. These people are just trying to survive. They're in a desert-like environment. They don't have a lot of water. And he's asking himself this really tough question. Would he have shared his little bit of water that he had left with the men? Or would he have just kept it for himself and kept going? That is such a tough question in survival times. He is trying to survive. Wow, his conscience is like being torn back and forth, wanting to help other people, but knowing if he gives up his water, he may not survive. So there's this major internal conflict, major internal battle that he is struggling with. So obviously, that's a big, tough question. So this makes me understand the character in the story better by this character is thinking of other people, right? And he's like, man, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. But what a hard struggle and conflict to be a part of, to have in his life. So now we're going to come back to the story, and I want you to start visualizing what's happening and imagine how the characters are feeling. And when we do that, we can better understand what Salva is going through. So we're going to read one more passage, and in this scene, Salva is all alone, and you're easily going to spot the tough question. I am alone now. I am all that's left of my family. His father, who had sent Salva to school, brought him treats like mangoes, trusted him to take care of the herd. His mother, always ready with food and milk and a soft hand to stroke Salva's head. His brothers and sisters, whom he had laughed and played with and looked after, he would never see them again. How can I go on without them? But how can I not go on? They would want me to survive, to grow up and make something of my life, to honor their memories. So let's think those tough questions. He asked 2 tough questions, right? One was, how can I go on without them? His family did not survive. So he's all alone in the world. How is he going to survive this world all by himself? But then he thinks, and he asks himself another question, but how can I not go on? Right? He needs to honor the fact that his family did not survive, but he did. He needs to keep their memory alive. He needs to be better, right? And make something of himself and maybe help solve or work through these problems that these rebels are having. Maybe he could be a part of the solution or part of the change, right? So those are some super powerful questions. And one thing I'm thinking is, these questions lead me to think that this character is very, very brave. Salva is incredibly brave. And I can think back in the just these couple of passages that I've read, what he's gone through to bring him to this point of realization that, how can I not go on? I need to continue working hard, and I need to continue trying to survive so that way I can make something better of myself. And we can see that he ran from his home when the rebels came. He was separated from his family. He has been walking alone, and he did end up getting with a group of people, but they were all just trying to survive. And now his family is no longer with him, but yet he is going to summon that strength, right? He's going to get all that strength that he can to keep going, to keep persevering, to keep going on and working hard. So this is telling me, like, he's giving himself almost like this little pep talk, like, how can I not? I've got to do this. My mom and dad would be devastated to know that I gave up. They would want me to keep going. I want to make them proud by going and working hard and surviving. So it's easy sometimes when you're reading to go right over those tough questions, to just kind of gloss over them and think, that's not that important. But really, these tough questions are ones that are huge clues into how our characters are developing. And even though the author doesn't give us any sort of answers right then and there in that moment, eventually you're going to put those questions together, and they're going to help you realize more about this character and more about the story, and it's going to help you really understand the characters and the story as it's unfolding in front of your eyes. So remember, when you recognize these tough questions that the character is asking themselves, or the character wonders, says, I wonder if, you're going to pause and ask yourself, how does this question help me understand the character and or the story better? And when you can understand the character's situation better, then you're better able to contemplate how you might react in a similar situation or in similar circumstances. When you can do that, then you are going to have a much, much deeper understanding of the conflicts that are being presented to you in the books that you are reading. So I know that was kind of a heavy passage, but it's an important one, right? It's very important to hear how this Salva, this boy from the Sudan, struggled, and how he questioned different things, and how he was going to keep moving on, and how it showed his progression and how it showed his bravery. All right. I hope you will be thinking about those tough questions when you're reading your stories, and even though there isn't an answer that the character comes up with right away, it's going to help you to understand what conflict, what internal struggle that character is having, or the foreshadowing, what may happen in the future in the story. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day, and remember to be paying attention to all those signposts, the contrasts and contradictions, the tough questions, and our third one, our aha moments that we've done so far. So those three, please be watching for those in your books to help make you become better readers and more thoughtful readers. All right, thank you. Bye. Oh, sorry, I didn't stop it. Bye.